Welcome to the fourth video in our video series titled What Are My Chances? Where Shrikant and I analyze profiles that people have written in, asking about what are the chances of getting into a school. So today the profile that we're going to look at is a finance professional. So he is a male, chartered accountant, has 3 years experience working for Deloitte.
Okay.
Right? They're still operational in India.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
After all that, 680 on the GMAT. He is looking at some stretch schools, and his dream schools are Wharton, Booth, and London Business School. And he says also open to schools that are slightly lower, but in the top 20. So he's very clear that he wants to go to a top 20, dream top 3, and then he's saying, maybe some schools. Extracurriculars, he's written a couple of things, like for example, he's part of the local road track club, and he also seems to have done a couple of minor things, but overall nothing remarkable on the extracurricular, because as you understand, as a chartered accountant, he probably did articleship 3 years. That anyways your life is squeezed out of you. You don't have a proper college setup and you don't get all that. And post that, if he's working in Deloitte as a CA, he's probably working in Bombay, so he has commute, so he probably spends like an hour, 2 hours on the road. So it's not possible for people to have like diverse extracurriculars. So that's what it is. So what are your initial thoughts?
Initial thoughts is that this candidate will have a very hard time convincing admission committees to get an opportunity. First of all, the 680 in the GMAT
680
is a straight away.
Big
It won't cut it out. They won't even read his profile.
Correct.
With the 680, because typically B schools use the GMAT as the first level of filtering. At this score, with 3 years of experience, he won't even be considered. So that's straight away out. The good part is that he comes from a CA background. That background is always very sought after. Not just, and it's sought after by B schools because there are a lot of companies that come to these B schools for engagements, either internships or whether it's final placements, and they have a lot of finance-based roles. Typically, people who have done a CA, who have a CFA level 1, 2, 3 done, are given the highest order of priority. So for him, the biggest angle is he has to work on his GMAT score. Obviously, there's a problem with his extracurricular activities also, because if you're applying to a tier 1, 2, 3, that level of college, if you're applying to, you need to check all the boxes. It's not just 1 or 2 will work for you, everything has to be there. So from that angle, it looks really hard. Apart from his CA angle, there's nothing much to him that we can be attributed as a positive.
So I think, my take would be, as you said, a lot of times, especially and when we are working with clients in the top 10 kind of US schools, applying from India, chartered accountants, hyper competitive pool. So many chartered accountants end up looking at MBA as an option. So I think that 680 has to be at least 30-40 points higher, at least at the minimum, but I would say probably you should retake, get to a 730, 740. The second thing that I also realize is, though he has written Deloitte, he has to probably talk a little bit more and not hide behind, because I know for a fact that in India, if you were to take PwC, Deloitte, Ernst & Young, and what did I miss out? KPMG, right? EY. If you take these top auditing firms and look at all the chartered accountants, I'm pretty sure there are a few hundreds applying every year.
Yeah, with a very similar profile.
With very similar profile. So I think, though it kind of looks nice to have Deloitte and chartered accountancy, I think what you mentioned, CFA could make a difference. I think that's one. Higher GMAT could make a difference. Differentiating what he did could potentially, right? And this is where I think this is one of those profiles where the diversity and the leadership part, the two parts of the profile, would really make a difference if he's able to dig deep into some stories. So we worked with a candidate, I worked with a candidate who had similar CA background, and one thing that he was very proud of was he said the way I juggled the articleship. He was going through a personal turmoil at that point. He has lost his father, and he had to take care of the home, and on top of that he was studying for the CA exams, right? And he said that 1 year, 2 years of my life was a pressure cooker situation, correct? And he wanted to show his tenacity, his ability to bounce back, his mental resolve, his EQ. So I think somewhere he probably needs to pick a different angle also to showcase. This local road track, what is there any space to play on it, or do you think it should just be left off, or just mentioned somewhere in the application form but not developed any further?
If I'm looking at from, if let's say I'm in the admission committee and I come across this profile, this road track thing that he mentioned, if he's able to call out specific events that they were part of, hopefully something that is of a big scale. Correct. If it's something very localized and it's something that's done just by a group of friends and doesn't have a money angle to it, and it's just done for the fun of it, it's just something that should be mentioned because people should know you do something outside your work. But apart from that, there would be hardly any weightage in my head, at least. What this guy needs to be very careful about is that some people who are not engineers and who are applying from India to a B school, they somehow think that they already have an advantage because they are not engineers. So my story is already different from
diversity profile.
From a diversity profile. But the angle here is that this candidate will not be measured against the engineers. His story will be measured against by the story of other CAs. Okay, there, as you rightly mentioned, there are a lot of CAs also who will also apply to this B school. He won't be the only one. So if he is able to articulate very clearly that in his 2 or 3 years in his company, what did he do that changed the game, or at least tried to change the game, that is going to be far more important. It should not be complacent that just because I'm not an engineer I have an advantage. It's not an advantage at all. So that's my point of view on it. And yeah, on the extracurricular parts, whatever I heard first impressions were okayish. If he has to take it to the next level, he should be doing something and then talking about it, specifically because of the kind of schools he wants to apply to.
I think, sometimes when I talk to candidates about the stories, I usually tell them that there are these meat and potatoes and then there is gravy. So sometimes what may happen is that the gravy is just a background to the story. He says, oh, by the way, since I was involved in road track, here is the main thing that I have to tell. So he mentions it, but it's like in the background, not really the main story that he wants to develop. And I think sometimes people get so fixated with top names. So for example, the schools that he's picked, Wharton, Booth, London, so all of them good in finance. So he's kind of probably went, Googled, top finance schools. He's probably picked that, and to be honest, from his perspective, that's the word he knows. So this is what he's looking at. But I would seriously advocate, go out, research, and I think one simple thing that you can do, and I just usually give them 2 or 3 simple exercises. First, I tell them, go to the website, register. You'll automatically start getting emails. The schools also try to woo you, right?
Of course,
They are going to send you information. You're going to get educated. The second is, we mentioned this earlier about LinkedIn, right? A lot of schools also have the student ambassadors that are willing to go out and reach out and talk. So maybe reach out to someone in these schools. And the third thing which a lot of people ignore is following them on social media, right? Just subscribing to their YouTube channel, looking them up on what are the kind of events that are happening. Just getting that sense gets you to know more about the school, because right now these are the schools and he's saying he's okay till top 20, but each of these top 20 schools are different in their own ways.
Of course.
And one thing that I usually maintain is doing an MBA is the second most important decision in your life after deciding to get married, right? So in terms of investment in time, energy, money, why wouldn't you want to know about the schools, right? So people are sitting in India saying, oh, this seems to be a good school. I say, actively go, encourage, learn more about the school, and I think he should expand his, range of schools. I would definitely add schools in the 10 to 20. I would say even with an improved GMAT score, he could also look at other geographies, maybe Europe and Southeast Asia, India. So some more schools do that.
I agree. This is in itself not good enough for now.
Right, for a top school. But has good potential with an improved GMAT score and a couple of other things.
I agree.
Right? Great, so with that we've wrapped this video, and in the next video we're going to have a profile with someone who has extensive experience and who now wants to come back and do an MBA after like 2 years. Right? So let's have